In today's video, we're going to show you how to remove a pretty deep scratch on your vehicle's paint. What's up everybody, my name is Phil and welcome to Miranda Detailing, where we make satisfying detailing videos. If you haven't already, consider subscribing, clicking that bell, that way you get notifications each time our videos drop each week and you don't miss stuff. So thank you guys for joining us. We are going to be removing that scratch on our own personal vehicle. It's on the driver's side front fender. I don't know where it came from. I don't remember seeing it before. It must be a new scratch, and I'm going to try to remove it by wet sanding and compounding and polishing it out. And of course, we're going to tread very carefully. I'm not usually one for wet sanding, but I want to try it on my own vehicle here. And I've already measured it, and this panel has actually been repainted already. So it does have a lot of paint on it, but of course, you know, it's sandwich layers. So you have base coat, or your primer, base coat, clear coat, and then if they maybe sanded a little bit or just prepped it, then you have more base coat color and more clear coat. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have more clear coat to play with, really. So it measured about 8 mils, and the rest of it is about 4 to 5 mils. So obviously it was repainted, and it could have extra clear on it. I don't really know. I don't have a gauge, a paint depth gauge that separates all the different layers. I just have one that reads the whole layer, basically, of clear coat, paint, and primer. So I'm still going to tread carefully, but I'm pretty sure I have enough paint here to work with. Even if I only had 2 mils of clear coat, which is generally what you have, average of 4 mils for paint, and that's including primer, base coat, and then clear coat on top of that. And usually average, primer is about 1 mil, base coat is about 1 mil, and then your clear coat is double that, so about 2 mils or so. That's still very, very thin. That's about a sheet of paper folded in half. So pretty thin. But of course, as detailers, you know, paint corrections, removing swirls, removing some light scratches, you are abrading the surface. You are taking off microns of paint, and you only want to go so far. You want to be very safe when you're doing that, and that's how I do it. That's how I see it. I want to be very, very safe and tread lightly when polishing, and especially when wet sanding. So let's see how far we can get with this scratch and make it look much, much better, if not completely remove it. So let's take a look. All right, so here is the scratch we're talking about. So rule of thumb is, if your fingernail can feel it, if you can catch it, then it's pretty deep into the clear coat. Now I can feel it, but it's not extremely bad. It's not extremely deep. So we'll wet sand this gently with some 2500 and then 3000, and then we'll compound it and see how much of it we can remove. So as you can see, it's really, really swirled. It's bad. But I'm just going to focus on this scratch here. And you can see the pinstriping too. I've removed the pinstriping, but I never polished anything. I just removed it. But you know, you can really only see it when you're examining the paint like this with these bright lights. I really don't even see it in the sun that much at all. So, but you can definitely see that scratch. So here are my little homemade sanding blocks. Not really homemade, but it was one large sanding block, and I cut it down to these nice little bite-sized portions. So now, with your wet sanding paper, you can cut it down to just a little block here. And of course, you know, you have your softer side here and your more rigid side. So I'm going to go with the softer side for, you know, this type of sanding. You don't need to be extremely aggressive. You actually want to kind of finesse it. So there's your little mini sanding block. I just have water here. So we're going to spray it down. And let me focus on here and lock the focus in. The camera tends to want to jump around a lot with focus, and go in a 45-degree angle, sanding. Just finesse it. Go very, very gently. Don't go too crazy. Don't put a lot of pressure. I'm putting just medium pressure to feel the bite of the sandpaper. And just go in nice, even strokes. Now this is 2500 grit. It's not super, super heavy, but already you can see it cutting. You can kind of use this as a squeegee. Well, that's a horrible sound. Okay, so let's bring you in. So you can see here, it's just cutting the orange peel. You can see how bumpy it is. Get you in for a little bit of a closer focused look here. You can see how bumpy it is. It's not even really touching the scratch yet. It's just kind of cutting the orange peel part of it down. So unfortunately, because it was repainted, you can kind of tell from the orange peel, this area is going to be flattened a little bit more. But that's okay. The scratch will be gone. And now that you have a feel for it, you can get a little bit more aggressive and start making sure that it's cutting. And just keep checking your work. Make sure to wash away any of the residue. So you are abrading the clear coat. You are removing microns of clear coat. That's what the milkiness is. So let's squeegee it off. And you can blow on it like that, and it kind of speeds up the drying. Okay, so now you can see it starting to cut into the clear coat a little bit more. And it's taking away that orange peel, leaving it very, very nice and flat. And I really can't feel that scratch. So now what I'm going to do, I know for some guys they would say, nope, keep going, the scratch isn't out yet. I'm going to tread carefully. This is a lesson in being careful when you're wet sanding. So let's go at 3000 grit and finesse it out a little bit, and then we will compound it and see what we're looking at with that scratch. So I have a little 3000 grit disc, which you can do the same thing. Put it on your little block, like so, and you can use it to sand. And do the same thing. So this is 3000. You're just starting to refine those other sanding marks and go in the same direction. I know some guys have their certain method of wet sanding. Like I said, I am not a wet sander. I am not one who does a lot of wet sanding. I'm just not. I go carefully with paint corrections. I'm very, very careful. If I don't need a wet sand, I'm not going to. If someone has to just live with the scratch, that's what they're going to have to do. So let's dry the panel off. Alright, so that's with 2500 and then 3000. And I know you still see the scratch. Let's zoom in a little bit on it. So I know you still see the scratch, but let's compound it and see how it will look, since we've flattened it down a little bit, and really, you can't feel that. You can't feel it anymore at all. I could feel it before, not anymore. So, with wet sanding, you are also dealing with the little valley of that scratch, and you're going to be smoothing out the edges of that valley. I'll show you in a second what I mean. So guys, here's my little kit that I use for paint touch-up and minor wet sanding. I have a couple of different paint touch-ups in here. I've just kind of collected throughout the years. Universal black. You can't go wrong with universal black. Get this and just have it there anyway. I also have like a universal white in here. I have a metallic blue, a silver color, a dark silver color, kind of generic ones that you encounter a lot. So just pick up a bunch of these pens and keep them in a little kit like this with, little wet sanding things. I also bought this kit years ago, the Meguiar's headlight refinishing kit. And I still have some of the wet sanding boxes in here. I'll most likely be transferring all the stuff into my new tool chest. If you want to see the video to the tool chest, click up there. So here's all my... Oh, I actually have to open this up. Alright, so I have all of my pads in here, which I love. So let's take out one of our compounding pads, our little Meguiar's 3-inch cutting disc. Actually, we're probably going to need one of these as well for finishing. So grab those. I'm going to be using my Porter cable with the 3-inch backing plate, which I probably need to get a new one because this one's starting to get beat up. And Meguiar's D300. Yeah, it will cut sanding marks. Now, if I need to go a little stronger, then I do have M105, and I'll most likely use M205 for finishing. So yeah, I still use the M105 and 205 twins here because they simply work. Yeah, there's other polishes and compounds out there that are great, but I don't see the need to buy every single one of them. This one, this combo works great, and D300 works great. Between the two of these, if I can't cut any further, if I can't get certain defects out, I probably will not get them out. I will have them stay there because I don't want to go too aggressive. That's just my personal opinion. I don't like to go too aggressive with paint corrections. I don't want to compromise clear coat. Alright guys, so you have your polisher all set. I'll put about 4 dots like so to start with. I don't bother with priming the pad. I just don't see the need for it. So it will be primed as you polish it. I'll go around the area like so. Start at speed 3 and bump it up to about 5. I'm going to go with a second round here. So I went a little aggressive with the compounding to see if we can remove the rest of the sanding marks, which we did. And of course, the scratch is still there. You can see it with the light. So you can barely pick up the scratch in this type of light, but when you put this light to it, of course you can see it. That's my fingerprint right there. And you can see the micro marring from heavily compounding the sanding scratches out. That's usual. That's how it works. Now, yeah, it still looks bad, but It's really only when the light hits it. We have rounded the edges on the scratch. You're only seeing the direct light hitting the scratch, and you're going to see it, definitely. Let's see if we can go a little bit further with it. So I'm going to put my light right on my workbench here. That way I can actually see the light on the panel. Let's go at it a little bit more. Instead of using the soft, squishy side of the sanding block here, I'm going to use the more firm side. And that'll get you just a little bit more aggression out of the sanding. And I'm really going to focus on the scratch itself. Put a little bit more pressure. So now you can see how it's starting to dig out that scratch a little bit more. Let's see what it looks like when we compound and polish it. So we've sanded it down. Not going too aggressive, but we have sanded it down and it is still showing through. I can still feel it. Now, if you want to go further, let's go a little further. And what we're going to do is combine paint touch-up with this and then sand it down and see if we can get rid of that line at least 90% or more. So there's the line right there. So what we're going to do is continue to wet sand a little bit more. All right. So that line isn't going away. It's still there just slightly. So let's try something else. Maybe put a little bit of paint in there. I always keep this on me. Don't worry about getting the paint touch-up pen or anything like that. I basically want to fill in that space. If you use a very delicate hand, you can put it on there very, very lightly, very gently. Just enough to fill in what you need to fill in. All right, so it's dry to the touch. So with just a little bit of paint in there, you can see that it filled in just enough of what you needed it to fill in. So let's finish this off with 3000. So now let's compound this. Here is the scratch. Don't mind the micro marring. I just went over it quickly with compound and polish just to show you. But much better. You barely see that scratch now. You're going to see it, unfortunately. It is deeper than I thought. You can barely feel it now. But it's right there. You can only see it if you really point it out and you search it out with lights like this. I have another one right here. Another deep one that I can barely feel it. Barely feel it. But it's deep enough where you would probably want to wet sand a little bit. Maybe fill it in. But filling it in with paint does help. It helps tremendously. So give that a try with some of your deeper scratches. Yeah, you can probably fill it in with paint first, then wet sand it, and then compound it. Or you can try to wet sand it first, see if it comes out, and then if that doesn't, then fill it in with paint, and then wet sand it again, and then correct it and see where you're at. But guys, realistically, some scratches are just not going to come out. You're going to have to get them to the best that you can without compromising the clear coat. Don't compromise the clear coat. If you can't get it out, don't try to go overboard. But you really have to search it out. I have my fingerprint there, so it would focus on it. But you'd really have to search it out. Right there. But do you think the customer will see that? You don't see anything. It's very difficult to pick that up and to find it. Customer would be very, very happy with that. So that is how you can remove or at least reduce a scratch on your vehicle's paint. Now here, you're dealing with scratches that may or may not come out completely. Be gentle with them. Don't aggressively attack them with wet sanding and potentially burn through the paint and cost you thousands. Be very gentle. If you need to fill it in and then wet sand it, that is a much better option because you're at least filling in that scratch instead of trying to level everything down to it where you're compromising microns of paint, and that could cause you problems in the future. So fill in where you can, wet sand a little bit if you can, and then compound and polish those out. Those are for deeper scratches. There's ones that are going to be deeper than that where it has gotten into the primer or even into the metal. With those, it's probably safer to put paint in there, fill it up with paint, and then level off the surface by wet sanding, and then compound and polish it out. Now, I don't think I have any scratches or any chips or things like that on this vehicle, but when we do find a vehicle that has that, we'll demonstrate how we do that with a really, really bad scratch that we have to fill in, level off, and compound and polish. But let me know down below, how do you attack scratches like that? Do you do the same procedure? Do you just simply wet sand and compound them out? Or do you try to fill them in and save as much clear coat as possible? With newer cars, you're getting thinner clear coat, unfortunately. So be very careful with that. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, learned something. If you did, give it a thumbs up, like it, share it with others who may enjoy it. And don't forget to subscribe and click that bell. That way you get notifications each time our videos drop each week and you don't miss stuff. And if you're interested in any of the tools or products that we use, then click up here. That goes to a dedicated page on our website where you can purchase tools and products. Brings you right to Amazon so you can buy those products. And if you're interested in any of the merchandise that we have, the t-shirts and more, then click up there on the card or click down below for links and you'll be able to purchase any of those products with 15% off with Miranda 15. So check it out, guys. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Have a great week.